Welcome to the Love Foundry podcast today on January 19th, 2025. There's some noise going on. So things are shifting in the world. Tomorrow inaugurates a new era for us here in the United States and the world.
Uh-huh.
Among many other things shifting and happening, and here we are.
Yeah. That's an interesting point about the shift. In America, due to the polarization of opposites, we tend to think of this shift as being the Trump shift or something because he's been inaugurated as president. But it's actually not. He's just a featured player in the conservative aspect of how this goes from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
But the shift is towards love, and there's no way to misunderstand that if you realize that's the direction we need to go. And everybody wants to go that direction. Everybody tries to. I mean, I've titled this particular podcast "The Impossible Becomes Possible," because up to now it's been seemingly impossible. No matter how much we tried, trying to make it go the direction of love, it ends up veering off to one opposite or the other. Because in us, that's not where our power is centered. When your power is centered in love, then that's where all action and intention and creativity in this is going to carry us towards. Mm-hmm. And so this left and this right is really not because someone wants to go left or go right. It's just simply the tendency of their personality nature is to veer off to the objective, which is the conservative side, or the subjective, which is the more, and I don't like to use the word liberal. Conservative works pretty good because conservative is what it is. But liberal is not a really very good term because it doesn't really describe the subjective sense. Are you moving furniture in the background there?
No, I'm sorry. There's a door rattling. I'll just kind of prop it open. You carry on. I can hear you.
Just take out that folded piece of paper. Oh, that's a different piece. A piece of paper and put it in there and close the door, and it'll hold. I have a door like that. The wind does that too.
It's funny because I closed all the windows before we started to avoid this.
Well, problem. You're in Maui. That's a windy place to be. Yeah. So the impossible becoming possible. That's what we're going to discuss a little bit of here when we get Taylor back.
I'm here.
You're there.
No, but what you were saying, how Trump's just a player in this whole thing, and it looks like, he's in this power place, which to some degree he is, but, we're all that too. We're all players in this. We're all here at this moment.
And if we don't see love itself as the center reality emerging into our view, then we see one or the other. Mm-hmm. And is that one of your little screamers?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
They're all part of it too.
All part of it. So humanity has gone down this trail between left and right and left and right and left and right, whatever we called them. And you see it in every country. Politically, you see it in every country. You see that group which is called by some name or another the conservatives, and that's called by some name or another the liberals, and then they call themselves the Greens or the this or the that, but they really fall into these two opposites because the center group of humans, which is coming, who refuses to see either opposite, but focuses their attention on the union of the two. And that's how the impossible became possible. And it still is growing. So I don't know how you see it, Taylor, but just tell me if you think this is not accurate. But the scene of the reality that is love, remember this, there are three things in life. Life has divided itself into three things, into our perception or our ability to act wholly with life. If you want to represent all of life, being Taylor, being human, being functional, then you're going to have to include three things, because everything has divided itself one way or another into these three things, which is why we have a basic trinity of reality, which is Father, Mother, and in our case, Son, which really expresses the three aspects of will, the dynamic energy of purpose that carries things forward, and love, which is the inclusive magnetic power that connects everything to one, and intelligence, which is how we determine, discriminate, and figure out everything in between. Now,
and then just to connect those to the Father would be the will aspect, Mother is intelligence, and then that unification would be the Son.
Yes. Well, it's the Son, which is the Christ aspect in the spiritual or religious sense, or the Buddha aspect in the Buddhist pantheon. The Buddhist aspect looks like the intelligence aspect, but in fact, it's a love aspect, because that's where intelligence arrived at in the Buddhist journey of processing. It doesn't arrive, it arrives at perfect intelligence, which is what the Buddha accomplished, perfecting his mental body, which we don't know what that means, because it's a lot of perfecting and it's a big body when you get to his stage. However, upon doing that, it immediately, he or anyone who does it, immediately uses that perfected mind to serve love, to surrender to love, to give itself to that second quality, which is love. And that makes him like the Christ, who starts at love and then carries forward from there. It makes them both that quality of life. Now, intelligence, I don't know how quite to talk about. I mean, I understand what it is and I see it, but I don't quite know how to talk about to a group like this what the spiritual avatar or spiritual teacher is who stands for the intelligent aspect of life, who represents that to us. In the hierarchy, with the spiritual hierarchy of all those guys up there that fill up that group, which is, by the way, coming out into the world's experience with us, human. In that group of people, the one who represents that is called the Lord of Civilization, which is really how humanity intelligently groups itself together and lives a cooperative and productive life. That Lord of Civilization in this case is the spiritual master Rakatsi, who has that name because of having been a Transylvanian count. They call him the Count. So, whereas Maitreya is considered the master of love, or the Christ embodiment, not Jesus, who occupies another place in hierarchy. And the first aspect of will is occupied by a different spiritual master. And so these three distinctions are there for us to look at. And we don't have to agree with it, or we don't have to participate with that, but it's there. So what I'm talking about, the impossible becoming possible, is when you personally, and we can ask you how you're doing with that, identifies love itself as a aspect of the three, independent of the other two, and something you're going to bring into your life in a way that empowers you with it. That's a process of discovery and activity and understanding that eventually produces the result of you. You're already empowered by intelligence, obviously, and you've got will. Everybody's got some will. We have free will. We don't necessarily have as much as some of the big boys do, because there are people that will is their basic life energy. And ours, yours and mine, isn't basically the life energy of will. there are 7 life energies that you can animate by, and will is one of them. And if you add all 7 together, then you get cosmic love. So it's a very interesting process to think about identifying yourself with love and taking that upon yourself as a journey into filling yourself out. So you're not just carrying 2/3 of life around in you as will and intelligence. And you give up trying to push love into intelligence. It's not your fault. That's been being done since the Stoics of the Greeks, who tried to figure out the philosophy of life themselves, and then the existentialists who defined sort of our 20th century philosophy, and now they're flooding over into the 21st, although they're starting to get a little pushback. They all defined love as an aspect of intelligence, a quality of intelligence. And they kind of shoved it over into intelligence and said, let's do it there. But by doing that, you made it impotent. You took away the power. Love's power, if you put it into intellect, disappears, because intellect is impotent. It doesn't have, people say, knowledge is power. Well, maybe the knowledge of how to make gunpowder is power if you apply it with will. So it isn't really that intellect has any power. It really doesn't. And in fact, to make the illustration, if you have a picture an apple, you can picture an apple, right? Washington Delicious. Do they grow any apples in Hawaii?
We sure do.
You do?
Good. Yeah.
Are
we
they?
have a couple, yeah. They grow really small, though. They're little, tiny guys.
Okay. Well, either way, what do they call them?
There's a couple different varieties that grow right here. Actually, I know someone that grows Granny Smith, which turn out pretty good, but they never get beyond a certain size. It
Are they
probably has to do
green?
with Yep, they're green. But then there's little red ones too.
Yeah,
And then we
that's
have
interesting
mountain apples.
because everything else seems to grow bigger in Hawaii.
Yeah, I think it has to do with, we don't have a long growth season where you have these,
Yeah.
we have 2 seasons rather than 4.
Oh, okay. Well, the point being, so you imagine an apple. Let's forget about the Granny Smiths. I wasn't ever that fond of them anyway.
They
So
make
you
a
gotta
good
walk.
pie.
I suppose. Yeah, they could, because you got the liberal ability to add sugar to it and cinnamon and stuff like that. But if you, Vic, to keep it simple, if you imagine a Washington Delicious, one of those red ones that's just perfect, and you think about how it crunches when you bite into it, and it's juicy and it drips, and it's got a smell to it. See, these are all things that your intellect can summon from its memory and create a perfect picture of an apple through more than one sense, several senses. And it's like, man, that is a perfect apple. But that alone is just going to stay an image in your consciousness. Now, take that image of a perfect apple and add emotional desire to it. I want that. That's not an intellectual impulse. That's an emotional impulse. That's your emotion saying, give it to me. I want that. So it's immediately sending out energy to summon an apple into your experience. And if you keep that up for a little while, holding that image in the intellect, then that's how we produce the result in our life of having an apple. It isn't really very long. If your commitment is strong to getting that damned apple and having it, it's amazing how it can mysteriously appear in your life. I mean, sometimes so radically mysteriously that you walk out the door and your neighbor says, hey, I got a couple of Washington Delicious apples from my aunt. You want one? And you think to yourself, how did that happen? Well, it happens. It happens because of the nature of how life responds to a combination of intelligence and desire. And so when we think about love, you get all of that in one package. Love is the creative power. It's what can create something in your life. Desire without focus, what won't produce anything except a nervous agitation.
Let me give you an example. I was thinking, because maybe it's the same sort of thing. It feels more like harmony. So I use the example of, you ever
hold, pause one moment. I think your microphone is too hot.
Oh, okay. Let me switch the setting. I'm sorry. Yours was crackling a little bit earlier too. I want to tell you.
Well, it's operator air.
Let me turn my. Does that sound a little better?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so. Try that.
Okay. So I was kind of talking to somebody about this the other day, and I was using the example of looking for seashells or hunting for crystals. And your eyes do adjust, so that's one thing, but it's like you're tuning yourself into that specific element. You're looking for this one specific thing. And so it's all of a sudden, it's like they start to attract to you, like things that you would just walk by. All of a sudden, you notice, it picks up in your consciousness. It's kind of like,
right.
Like love is that way too. It's like as soon as you're holding that, even if you're not holding love itself yet, but your attention is tuned towards it, that harmonizing effect, it starts to attract it to you as you start to look for it. Once you start looking for it, it's like an invitation for it to come, and that magnetic attraction. Is that kind of off, or is this
no?
What you're...
No, it's just it's how nature responds. Nature is all of nature has the same thing, a need for love, just as we do. And a bird, when it wakes up in the morning, has an urge to get food, especially if it's feeding young. So its impulse to go find food guides it. And that thing that connects to that urge and impulse is love. There's no other name for it, because that's caring for the bird. It's the nurturing aspect of life as a living, cooperating power. And intelligence serves that by allowing the bird to identify with its eye or other senses something that might be food. So it goes about the business of sorting things out. And as humans, because we have lost our connection to love, we shove all those abilities into intelligence and into instinctual impulse or will. And
oh God, that makes so much sense. It's
yeah,
like because it's like we get so wrapped up in looking at the object of the desire or the impulse, and you forget that the whole thing behind all of it is the same thing. It's that love.
It is that energy. And
it's amazing, though. If you look at it that way, it all makes such sense.
It can make perfect sense if we separate the three out and let them live as independent energies in our environment that we are synthesizing into a single life act, like feeding ourselves or any of the things that we go about the business of doing. Now, in a way, we're using intellect, intelligence, and emotional desire to put life back together again. But it only gets us human desire fulfillment. It doesn't get more inclusive because it's human desire that is limiting. Remember, it's free will. So if you're limiting your life to your human desires, then you're excluding a lot of other possibilities. And if we start to connect with the idea of love itself as a energy in the universe that we want to promote that energy in ourselves and in our environment in a way that has general application. In other words, not just to us, but to the things surrounding us, to the things that we engage with, other people, animals, plants, minerals, everything in nature. We want love to become one of the central energies that we serve life with personally. And did you ever know that you could do that? Well, you know you could serve life other than yourself because you serve your kids. You serve the garden and the flowers that you grow there, and you serve all of the creatures that you throw some bread out for, the birds. And so you have a sense of yourself doing that. But probably when we're doing that, we don't have that strong realization that we're serving love to that environment. We're actually connecting our heart and our inner illumined mind, if you have an illumined mind, if we're connecting that to love itself and we're producing that in the environment through ourselves, then it's having a love impact on the environment, not just breadcrumbs out there for the bird that might find them. It's love promoting out from us into the environment. And what impact that has on the environment and on your own life, if you do it, is profound. It's a profound impact. But it was impossible, basically, for humans to do that for millions of years. We've been establishing ourselves on this planet as creatures of intelligence and will, and now creatures of love, for millions of years. And when we start to include that life aspect of love, when we fill in the 1/3 that's been missing, see, that's the only reason we're living an illusionary life. Sorry, I make it sound like I'm moving furniture, but it's really because one single cable
It's not bad.
touches.
It's just something's a little crackly on your mic.
Yeah, it's just how sensitive these things are. So let me turn this down. Maybe that line. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. All right. Yeah, down is better than up with these
It's true. Yeah.
Blue Yetis. They're sensitive mics. They're not great mics, but they're good enough for what we're doing until we have better studio, better equipment, better audience.
Until we move the operation to Maui, Dan.
Yeah.
Only a matter of time.
It's a great place to do it. A great place to do anything. So now we are moving ourselves to a place where our business, the Love Foundry, has decided to take on that project of making love as an energy of life available through a process, through the way in which it takes for a human being. And it's pretty much the same for everybody. Everybody has a different challenge when it comes to opening themselves up to being a purveyor of love, to be a supplier of love to nature around you, to matter, to plants, to animals, to other human beings, to your own life. You must provide that to your life consciously, because we are. Now, look, I didn't make the rules, but in this universe, humanity is the first evolutionary creature, a human being, where consciousness of love is required if you're going to express it, or consciousness of anything. We can be unconscious of these things, and we are animals. And a lot of human beings act predominantly on their animal instinct. You know, I grew up that way. I grew up in Alaska. You get thirsty, you go find a running stream, and you bend down and you get a drink. It never occurred to us to think about what the water might have in it, or what the other, fortunately, and where I lived, the water was running so fast and so fresh that you could pretty much drink it all the time, which isn't true of most other places. So, but you get thirsty, so you go drink from the stream. That's really an animal instinct in a human being. And it wasn't any thought about it. When we become conscious of, nowadays, we've polluted the earth so much, and it isn't all just us, by the way. There's a lot of animals. I remember when the water got really foul tasting, living in a logging camp I was in, and people, well, we went on for, I don't know, a couple of weeks tasting this taste in the water. Everybody said, what the hell, this doesn't right. But we were getting our water by having dammed up a stream, because it's an island that we lived on, and there's no facilities anywhere on the island. So you dam up a running stream and you pipe the water down to your little group of people. In this case, it was a logging camp. and you have water, gravity pressured water. So finally the guys got tired of fussing with it, and they hiked out and hiked upstream to find out what it is. And there's a rotting deer carcass lying across the stream, disintegrating into the water. And now that teaches you something. And one of the things it teaches you, trust your senses. If your senses tell you there's something wrong with the water, they're right. So we use intelligence to figure this stuff out. And we use our willingness to have what we want, which is a good tasting water and not a rotting corpse of a deer in it that some wolf had killed. We'd like that. So, but the primitive man wouldn't have thought about it. He wouldn't have put two and two together. And if he'd gotten sick from it, which we all might have at some point, then they do. And so we're developing this ability to think our way through. And as we've grown up over a couple millions of years, we've got a lot going on for us. Well, now we've created so much toxicity in the environment that we have to think about it. We have to think about how to filter our water just to get the frickin' plastic out and the forever chemicals and whatever else. So now we're forced. But all of that is an aspect of intelligence, which is an aspect of intellect, which is an aspect of experience growing and gathering itself, coupled with our desire, our wanting a good experience or a good outcome for ourselves.
Now, Dan, you said something I don't want to pass over because I think it was really important. You said trust your senses. And in relationship to the intellect, we have a tendency, I think, culturally, collectively, to look to our intellect, and our senses kind of take a back seat. People, personally, when I make the biggest mistakes of my life, it's because I'm using my intellect and I'm turning away from my senses that, it might be subtle, but it's there urging me in a direction. But my intelligence says that's not the smart thing to do.
No. Well, that's true. The point you're making is really, really important because it reminds us that love is not in the intellect. Now, these existentialists and these philosophers and these psychologists, psychiatrists, whoever it was, tried to push love into it by calling it an emotion or calling it an idea or just a mental thing. But the thing about it is it's not there. And if you don't make yourself if you don't make your sensitivity inclusive of love, you won't balance it with intelligence. You won't balance it with will. So in the situation of the water that we are now confronted with on Earth, full of plastic and all the other things that are in it, and our necessity to filter it and do all the work we have to do just to drink it, had love been equally present to our experience as we were on our way to ruining the water, it would have prevented us from doing so. I got a note from somebody in Hawaii, actually, Fred. I think you know Fred, but Fred sent me a thing about how all these diseases, this upward curve of all these increasing amounts of diseases in humanity, there's 22 of them, so like everything everybody's dying from, are all been increasing gradually on a scale as Roundup has been increasing in the pesticides. Now, I don't believe that Roundup causes cancer and liver problems and kidney problems and all the other problems that are going up on that scale. It's the absence of love in our relationship to food and to growing and to taking care of ourselves. Because you see, we're blocking that and we're going to some chemical process that seems expedient to us at the time because we're not concerning ourselves with the plant. We didn't stop to concern ourselves with what this Roundup does, because Roundup is put right into the DNA of corn, right inside of the DNA. Why is it put into the DNA of corn? Not to repel insects, which is what Roundup does, but to keep Roundup from killing the corn when they spray it on top of it. It doesn't keep it from damaging us. it keeps it from killing the corn. But no one ever stopped to think about what that was doing to the plant kingdom, or no one ever stopped to think about what that's doing to the insect kingdom, or the other aspects of health overall. And by the absence of that group concern, which is love's basic nature, nature is to concern itself with all life simultaneously in a harmonious and growing way. And by not doing that, by not concerning ourselves with that and finding some expedient way to kill off weeds or kill off insects or kill off something that takes a portion of our crop to survive for itself, we have violated a basic law of love. And by doing that, we can see that the increase in which we do that and the length of time in which we ignore that, the greater the increase of these things. But the cause is all up here on the level of denying reality, denying the inclusiveness of love's energy in our life. And if you want to stop and look at, because people have this terrible habit of thinking that things cause things, because it looks that way, but they don't. And CO2 does not cause weather. It just doesn't do it. It doesn't have the capacity to do it, because it's something that is effect. Now, if you want to get down to what's causing inhospitable weather for humanity, you'd better look at humanity. You'd better look at what we're doing to affect weather more than... Now, we've made that leap by saying, oh, it's CO2, it's fluorides, it's hairspray going up and destroying the ozone. It's because it does. The fluorocarbons just go floating right up into the atmosphere, and they start sucking up ozone. So yes, we are impacting the earth, but we're impacting it because we're having a lack of respect for the frickin' environment. It's okay to love the planet. And if you love the planet, and I don't mean say, oh, I love you and pat the planet on the ass. I mean, give the creative and cooperative energy to the planet that it needs to sustain a perfect, healthy, joyous biosphere. That's possible for us to do. We are humanity. There's billions of us. We have the power of love in us if we exercise it, and if it comes through us and out to the environment deliberately, consciously, then it's going to have a loving impact on it. And we're not going to do things that harm it. We're not going to. Now, I think the jury's out on whether or not increasing carbon in the atmosphere is causing any kind of weather. I don't subscribe to that. Maybe I should say I'm not convinced. Because, people who are shoving that agenda, pushing that agenda out onto the public with a certainty that I do not believe they possess. Because they're just looking at things and then creating graphs based on if this were true, and if this were true and that were true, then way out here, this is true. Well, I don't believe those graphs. I don't believe that science. I don't believe those scientists. I don't.
What's interesting, too, is we're made of, what, our body's like 68% carbon? Is that
more than that.
Well, I think it's more.
Carbon is the basis of all life on Earth.
Yeah.
We are a carbon-based life form.
That's why I don't buy the story either. Not that that's the point of this podcast at all.
It's not the point, but you realize that my point
against what we're made of here. It's like,
Well, yes, we are, and that doesn't make them wrong.
Right.
What makes them wrong, if they're wrong, is making suppositions based on the idea that something material causes life to do anything. This is not the natural order of things. The natural order of things is from the top down or from the center out. Mm-hmm. And if you are denying love into the environment that you live in, your environment is going to turn to crap. Just no doubt about it. Just start rejecting love in yourself, and pretty soon you're going to be bitching about something not working very well, because we start denying our our inner love, and we start acting on that denial, and we start sending out negative energy towards things. And what happens is we start poisoning the environment, but we're not poisoning the environment. What we're doing is we're removing love from the environment systematically. And if you remove all the love from any environment completely, you have evil. That's the nature of evil. The nature of evil is the absence of love in any environment, in any thought, in any feeling, in any substance. So, and it's an illusion. There is no such thing. There's only the illusion that you have removed love, because you removed it from your experience, from your consciousness. You didn't remove it from life. You just told it to stop showing up for you. That doesn't mean it doesn't show up for other things. So this is one of the difficult understandings about our relationship to love and our relationship to our environment, and how we impact the environment by denying love in ourselves, because we are fundamentally equipped as human beings to bring love into the lower environment, not the angelic kingdom. The angelic kingdom is doing fine with love. That's why it's called the kingdom of love. It truly is. But if you come down into this place where we live right now, while we're alive as human beings, we are in the material kingdom. The material kingdom has a different relationship to love. Love is not effective here to the elemental life forms that live here. It is effective to us, but we've denied it in our own experience because of a problem lying inside of us that we have to correct. We have to make ourselves a flow through for love. And if you can do that, if you can fix that glitch in you, the glitch in your matrix, and let love flow through, then what's going to happen? It's going to start producing love impact on our environment in a very profound way. The more people that do it, the more people say, but this is better. Well, how come we didn't do this like a million years ago? Because we didn't know how. And if you know how and you don't do it, then what does that make you? But if you know how and you do it, then what does that make you? See, we have to stop and ask these questions and then look at, is there a way to do that? Is there a way to go from someone who's not producing the pure energy of love in their life to someone who is? If we stop and ask these relatively serious questions of ourselves, then we can get down to applying a process, a formula, a posture to our lives that actually does that, because that's all it takes. We have to get out of this mystical idea that there's some magical formula up here with God or with some creative creature or some life entity that you have to have some sort of strange and mystical relationship with before love is available to impact your life. And then it never, if you're looking at religions, then it never really belongs to you anyway. It belongs to this mythical creature who can withhold it from you or give it to you depending on your conduct. Well, like the deer polluting the water in my Alaska childhood, I'm doing that. We're doing that to ourselves. Now, if you want better water, get your ass up and go up the stream and find out why the water tastes bad. See, that takes all the mysticism out of it, doesn't it? But it doesn't take love out. It does not. If you love the idea of your life being wonderful and other people's lives being wonderful, and you connect with that energy and decide that you're going to bring it in like a fire hose and put it out into the space, then all the fires that need love to put them out are going to go out. There goes your war, there goes your anger, there goes your hatred, there goes your anxiety, because love puts those fires out by what? By supplying itself to make whole the place in which it's missing. It's not missing in fact, it's missing in the consciousness of the people who closed it out of themselves. It reminds me of The Wizard of Oz, where everybody's wearing green glasses to make everyone believe that there's something special about this place, when it's all just the glasses they're wearing. Well, when we put on a pair of glasses that filters out love, then you're going to live in a pretty loveless looking environment. And we did this collectively as a human race because we collectively couldn't find our ass with both hands to put love into it. But now we can. Now we've grown up. Now we are close to the magical moment when humanity discovers this, what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a discovery that all the gold you were ever looking for lies right inside of you, right there in you. And if you start bringing it out, it starts creating everything you need for a perfect life, for a beautiful life, for a healthy life. And I'm especially sensitive because I did, 30 years in the nutritional world. I'm especially sensitive to how love impacts health. Why wouldn't I be? The first esoteric law of healing, and there's a number of them in the spiritual world. The first law is that all disease of any kind, whatsoever kind, mental, emotional, physical, clubfoot, I don't care, genetic, all disease is the creation of blocking love. That's it. Just block love. That's all you got to do. Or inhibit your soul life, which is synonymous with love. There are certain words that mean the same thing. They're different in how they apply to our lives, but they mean the same thing until you get to a level way, way up where you can make distinctions between them differently, like maybe the Buddha would. And that is love and God and Christ consciousness and the Buddha's consciousness. You couldn't separate these from each other. It's just not possible.
They're too big.
Well, they're too inclusive of each other, and the distinctions between them are real, but not to us, because when it gets down to us, each of those is totally conforming to the life and nature of the others in their world. The Buddha is in complete harmony with love, which puts him in complete harmony with God, which is the nature of the universe. The management of the universe is love. So that consciousness which manages love manages the universe. So you see, you're up at a level where it's all one thing, basically. And it's all inside of us. All of that, all those things I named, they're inside of us. And you think, well, how can it all be inside of you? Because your awareness, when you go in yourself and you open your awareness into the world of inner self, you're in the world of love. You're in the world of the Buddha. You're in the world of the Christ. You're in the world of God. You're in the universe where everything is. Because the person who's going within themselves is going from the skin of the universe. Your physical form, your personality nature is the skin of the universe. Mm-hmm. Like an eggshell.
For anyone that's listening, because I get asked this question a lot, how would you recommend somebody start that, shift in the direction they're looking, to look inside themselves rather than
okay. Well, I've been thinking about this, and we started this podcast recently, and at the Love Foundry, which is what we are, we have one subject. We're kind of a one-trick pony. We don't have any other tricks, and that's love, but the power of love. To get down to the essence of love, you get down into what empowers it. How is it powerful? And because it's a creative power, there is no greater power. It creates everything, and it creates it according to the purpose that animates the universe. whatever purpose caused the Big Bang to bang, if it did, that purpose, that creative purpose, carried in it love, because it's here, it's in life, it's life doing it. So the more we learn about that life, the more we realize it's made up of those three things: intelligence and will and love. Now they're interacting. And the greater the understanding in us of the interaction between these three things, the greater ability to be in life we have. Now, the Buddha is being a bodhisattva. He's being a perfect mind, a perfect heart, a perfect person, and he's a really big life because he's learned a lot about it. But he's made up of the same basic three things. If we put those basic three things in us and honor them and ensure that we grow love, which is the one we lack the most, if we grow that one up to where the human race should be with it, then we are an incredibly remarkable and powerful being. Just a average human being, incredibly remarkable and powerful, certainly powerful enough to make your personal life and the life of your family a wonderful and joyful experience on earth. I don't care what's happening to anybody else. Yours will be. And so will everyone else's. And if we do it collectively, it starts to undo all the damage we've done to the planet, and it starts to shine forth with a kind of collective love that it never has had before, because humanity hasn't been doing that job. And then the animal kingdom begins to be impressed by this quality of love because we're giving it to it. And the plant kingdom, which seems to be doing pretty well on its own, will start having transformations and changes. We don't know how it's going to impact the mineral kingdom, but you can assume it will, because it's impacting everything else and it's part of life. Now, to answer your question, what I want to do from here, from our point of view, from the Love Foundry's point of view, is do a series of 7 podcasts, which we'll work it out. We'll sit down and discuss how we want to break it down. I want to do the 7 steps to empowering yourself with love. Because if I ask you what are the 7 things that you feel you need to get your intelligence and your will around, and then engage love with, so that you can get all 3 of those things, love, intelligence, and will, producing love in your life. You see, that's a process, and there's a formula to that, and then there's a posture of you being in relationship to love in which it flows into and through you so that it impacts your life and the life of others around you. Those require changes in how you normally live your life. And those changes release love. It's not hard to do, and love is incredibly cooperative with the process because love loves us. But it doesn't override your free will. So if you're not living, and I say this with all tenderness towards you, if you're not living your life fully flooded with love, it's because you told it to get lost. No one did it to you. You did it to yourself. Now, some people could have done it to you the way a little child says, see what you made me do? I knocked over the lamp. See what you made me do? And, if that works out to be an excuse that you can get away with, then we learn how to use it. You made me hit you you made me sock you right in the eye. See what you made me do? I didn't want to hit you.
Whole country.
Yeah, you made me blow up. You made me push the button down. That's what Putin is threatening, isn't he? Look what you're going to make me do. You're going to make me do it. You're going to make me do it. You're going to make me do it. And so he's got everybody afraid that he will push the button down.
But no, the 7-step thing's great because it's like giving you tools to call on, because it's like shifting into a different paradigm. And so having those tools that you can, pull out of your tool bag, so to speak, it's really helps in this empowering process. It really is.
Well, it's going to. And look,
and it's right there.
Yeah, don't think some people just throw their kid off into the pool and to teach them how to swim.
I wish I could do that, but I just can't.
No, I which your kids will thank you for later. I still have trauma in my life for things done to me by my older brother, John, who I love John, and John's a wonderful guy. But when we were kids growing up, he was 4 years older than me, and I was the little shit he never wanted around because, I'm getting in his business. And so he would do things
I got
like,
those traumas too.
like put a blanket over my head and wrap me up like I was suffocating and hold me there until I screamed myself into insanity. And that creates a sort of lifetime frustration with being in tightly confined spaces you can't control,
I'm
which is called
claustrophobic too.
claustrophobic. Yeah, well, I think the human race is because I think we've died under tons of shit in the earthquake days that in previous lifetimes. I'm a sort of holdover lifetime kind of thinker, which that it was the it was the meeting of Nicaea where reincarnation was plucked out of the Christian religion, and so I'm not so willing to give it up that easy. But irrespective of reincarnation, if you take about 7 things, and I can reduce it to 7, I could give you hundreds.
It's a good number, anyways.
Yeah, 7 is something we can manage. It's like we got 7 colors of the rainbow. We got,
and then you get to the end of the rainbow, and you're the gold. So that's
there's a pot there. So all right, my leprechaun friends tell me that, but so in these 7. There's a kind of an order to them, and I puzzle about the order sometimes, and I think that the order varies because people vary. For you, the sticking point why you don't have love, not saying you're not a loving person, you certainly are, but the power of it flooding through your life, eliminating challenges of health and challenges of difficulty and personality and danger into your life, and increasing financial stability and all the things that love can do. Very, very few of us have all 7 of our life elements going. And so there's 7 rainbow colors and all of that stuff. So it does kind of break itself down naturally to 7, which I think it has 3 major and 4 minor qualities, according to the Trinity and other things that go on. Now, I'm not a numerology kind of guy. I like it, but I'm not like an expert in it. So I don't force it, but I'm just going to start out with 7. Now let's take a look. What would it take? And to give you an example of how I feel about it, I think you have to want it. Now, there's a word for wanting. I don't know what we're going to use when we do the podcast for it, but the first one I think is for us to come to the realization that we have to give this stuff a chance. You don't know the answer to all these questions about love because it's not in your consciousness. And I tell you it's not in your consciousness because you don't know how to create like love does. You can't turn water into wine. Love can.
Disagreeing.
Well, turn water into wine. Now some people think that didn't happen, so there's that. But the point is that love has powers that are inherent in it. That's why it can turn your life into something fantastic. But if you don't have it in your consciousness, you're not going to be aware of those powers working because nature doesn't have it anywhere else. It's not like love also has these powers. The powers of transformation, the powers of transmutation, the powers of unity. What makes unity work? Well, love makes it work. Well, how does it make it work? By being love. That's how it does it. And that's something life holds as a secret in itself that we have to figure out by living love for a long time before its secrets are given up to us in a way that we go, oh, that's how it's doing it. That's how the trick is worked. So, and grace is a quality of energy that when it floods us, it's just fantastic. But you can't cook it up. You just can't. You just can't cook up grace. When it hits you.
Things that you feel when it's in your presence.
Oh, yeah.
When you're around someone that you consider graceful, you feel it in that presence. So it's very it goes back to trusting your senses.
Yeah, in every way. It can come in, you're just watching something. I mean, I think of that when I think of a Kuan Yin type person, an Asian type person, or an Oriental type person who has just that sublime grace of movement and activity and poise that you just know is grace. But it also comes through the emotional nature and can touch us in a way that just melts away the emotional jingle jangle in us. And it can also come into the mind and create this impact that there's no other way to describe. But when you add all three of those together to an impact, then you've been like kissed by an angel or something. It really is undefinable. So everyone's had some contact with love's powers happening or moving in their space. Everybody. They didn't always recognize it, but it's there. But we don't have any constant, continuous empowerment of it. That's what we're producing. That's what we're going to produce, and give people the ability to control that power in their own life. And you can't force it into anyone else's. You love your kids, but you can only lead them to it and hope that their appetite for it will grow and they will take it in and begin to develop it in their own culture, in their own inner culture. So the first step, I think, is a will step, and that requires that we take on the intention to do it, the willingness to say, this idiot might actually have some truth in him, so I'm going to approach it as if there were such a thing as the power of love, and as if it were available to me, and as if I could, by certain actions of my own, make it happen, because I tell you that's absolutely true. No one gets it any other way. No one. Not the Christ, not Jesus, not the Buddha, not anybody. We have to choose of our own free will to bring this mysterious element of life into our life and make it a working, empowered process in us. So that starts with, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. Now, you can be at different stages of that willingness. I'm utterly committed. No other possibility exists for me except to complete that process. And I'm an amateur at it. I'll admit it. I'm no water into wine guy myself.
You're definitely the most committed man I've ever met.
Well, to that I am. Now, not to other things, I'm wishy-washy and ain't worth a shit. But that I don't have a doubt about that. And I always have been, by the way. It's not something I came to Jesus about somewhere during my life. That I did, actually, but it wasn't to Jesus. It was to life itself. And I've discovered it at 5 years old, which we'll talk about sometime. But we do come to a discovery that, and it wasn't that I discovered love. I discovered what the absence of love means, which is horror. It's horrible.
The impact you never get over.
You don't. When you discover what the absence of love does to you, you don't even know that love exists at that point. Well, I didn't. I was 5. But what you do is you make a commitment because you have no choice. You cannot continue to live with yourself if you don't make a commitment to restore to yourself and to the world the absence that only love can fill. Now, that can happen, and it happens to everybody every different way it could possibly do it. And when we see people who are redeemed from a life of sin or a life of acting against love, which is all a sin is, sin is just Latin for without, missing the mark, as they say. And so when you decide that the thing that's missing is love, you don't care why. You don't care who took it. You don't care what it takes to get it back. You just know, I've got to fix it. I've got to fix this. This is unfixable maybe, but I've got to try to fix it because I can't live in a world if I'm not trying to fix it. There was never even any idea in my consciousness that this was fixable. What I'm doing with the Love Foundry is because I figured out it is fixable. You can put love in your life. You can put the power of it in your life. Not emotionally, because that won't do you any good. It's not that it won't do you good. If you emotionally love towards other things, I love you, I think it's great. That's a sentiment of emotion, but it's not a creative power. So to get the creative power into that emotion of love, you've got to bring love itself down into the heart and out into the world. So the first thing is a determination. And then we need something that will...
Emotion is a force. It can help in the process, too.
It's a human force. It's the force of emotion, but it comes from the astral world. The astral world is the world that divides itself out in weight of substance. It's like if you poured everything into a jar and waited for it to settle. If you had 7 levels that settle out in your liquid, as a universe, the second level is the astral world or the emotional world. The third level would be the mental world, and so on up to the 7th level, which is life itself, sort of. So what I'm saying is that we have to decide, I want to do this. And if you do, then you can. If you have to invent, do you want fusion power, the power you can just plug your car into or your house into or your yeah, because why? Because fusion power is the generation of power practically free, so that everyone can use, and we're going to need it, because the moment you turned AI loose, you turned the most power consuming creature on earth loose, because electronics take power, a lot of it, because they generate heat. Now they've just developed a new chip, honest to God, a new chip that basically doesn't take power. They figured out how to keep the energy from turning into heat. That's a really amazing thing. But science is amazing. But the science of love is more amazing to me, because it gives you the gift of life, the gift of a whole life, a life that includes will, love, and intelligence. So we decide we're going to go after love. We're going to go get it. We're going to make it a power in our life, and we're going to live that life, because that will be great. And if humanity does it, we'll change everything. Everything. And it'll open up things to us that we cannot imagine yet. Really, you can't imagine it. It's hard to imagine your own immortality.
So exciting. That's what makes it such an adventure.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, your own conscious immortality is hard to imagine. But it's
right
it
takes
there.
The pressure off. It's like, I don't have to get it done in even one lifetime. Fuck it.
No, you're not. Well, you have forever to get it done, which is one of
the pressure off, instead of, always feeling under it.
Yeah, well, but be careful what you wish for, because one of the spiritual masters said, there's a moment in your life when you come to the full realization that you are truly and absolutely eternal in your own consciousness. And he said that moment is both a great joy and a horror. And I choose my words with care. So you can imagine the thing like, oh my shit, I never am going to end. I'm never going to end, because life is never going to end. Life built the universe out of itself and still remains wherever it was when it did it. So we got a long ways to go together, but the next step is love, because without it, you can't be aware that you're going there anyway.
Oh, hell
you can go ahead and die if you want to, but you're not going anywhere. You're going to go right over into a place where here I am, and thinking, well, now what? And on and on and on. But at some point, we grow so strong with love that we push back death itself. And we hold consciousness of ourselves through all experience of any kind whatsoever. But that's a bit down the path. So once you decide you're going to make love real, because it already is real, and the only thing you're doing is ignoring it. So once you decide you're going to stop ignoring love and you're going to make it real in your life, it starts to get down to a doable thing. I mean, if you want to build a birdhouse, you got to get a plan for a birdhouse. And then it gets doable, because you're going to need a little bit of wood, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and some paint and some nails and a hammer and a saw, and away you go. And pretty soon I've built lots of birdhouses because I lived around a lot of birds, but nobody ever lived in any of them because I was no damn good at it. But other people built birdhouses and they were occupied by whole families.
I have a daughter, Olivia. She's 11.
Yes.
One of these days we're going to have her on this podcast. But it's one thing, ever since she was a tiny kid, it's like, I always admired this in her. But if she wanted something and it wasn't around or available, she would just create it. And the thing she would create it out of would blow my mind because I would never think of it. It's like you're talking about this birdhouse. Well, if she wanted to build a birdhouse, she would, all kinds of crazy things. She went and found an old gourd just in a compost heap and just hollowed it out. Or she would just find random pieces of wood and just start putting them together. And it might not be according to plan, but she would just create whatever it is she wanted. And she would do it in this physical world. And it just reminds me of that because she already had that, confidence in herself that it's just available. She'll get it. It doesn't matter. It's there. So it's hers already. It's like all those barriers that we find in the way of, I can't have that because.
Well, and she has the good fortune of having a parent who's not teaching her that she can't do things.
It's true.
And
I actually did something only with her because after you have a couple kids, it gets more challenging. But from the time she was born to the time she was 2, I never told her the word no or you can't. It was only, yes, you can, but, sometimes this has to happen. Or, I'd find a way to phrase it so that those no's we always come against, they weren't in her consciousness at all because she never heard them. Now I have 3 kids and I'm like, no, stop. You're going to kill your brother if you swing that pickaxe or,
Right. No, I get it. We start to get a little sloppy about how we manage the development of love, intelligence, and will inside somebody, how we bring them up little by little in each of those departments so that eventually we produce someone who has the right order of those things. Now, do you really want will to be ahead of love in the order of importance inside a human personality? Or would you prefer intelligence were ahead of love? You can have intelligence ahead of love, and you got guys out there building bombs and chemical factories, and you can put will ahead of love, and you got guys out there that are starting wars and doing things that are not particularly loving. But if you put love first at the top of the pyramid of intelligence and will and love in the triad and let it govern it, then you have group inclusiveness built into each act, each thought, each feeling. Now, we try to do that. That's how we develop the golden rule, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. And but that's an intellectual idea of how to employ will and intelligence. Where's the love in that? You can say, well, that is love. No, it's not. It's a loving way to live. Empower yourself with the power of love itself, and that's an automatic act. Then it becomes an automatic act of creation. You don't create anything with intelligence or will that doesn't have perfect love as an automatic expression of it. That's what Christ consciousness is. It's the livingness of that. So if we decide we want that power and grow into that effectiveness in our 7-step path, we're going to start with the desire for it. I want that. I've got intelligence, I've got will, and I want love, and I want it now, and I want to get it. And I want it to impact my life. And there's a lot of understanding in that first step that we can cover when we talk about it.
So it sounds like that's our first podcast in the 7-step series.
It is to me.
Okay.
But the second step, I believe, is commitment. Because there's a secret to commitment. And when we do the step of commitment, you also cover the step of hope. Because hope is the realization that it could come. And faith. And faith is the trust that it's real. Not gonna be real, already real. Because faith works when we connect it to something that we don't yet possess. I have faith that this is real. Not that it will be real, but it is, but not necessarily now in my life. I have faith that I can find the Lost Dutchman gold mine. I know it's out there in the Superstition Mountains, and I know that Scotty found it and did it, and then he went away and never left a map. And so all I got to do is stumble over it, and there it is. And it's the faith in that.
I have faith that you can carry this through to the end without me. I love you, but I have
Oh, yeah? Your family's dragging you to it?
I gotta excuse myself.
I won't. I'll cover a little bit of the second step, and then we'll leave it for that.
Ciao.
Yeah. Thanks, Taylor. I'll check back in on you a little later. So to conclude before we end, why is it that when you quit and hang up, Seb's picture comes up? Never mind, because it's his fault.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never mind. We don't care. I don't know what comes up when I do it. Yeah. So commitment is the second step, which we're going to cover, because by understanding the nature of what happens with commitment, you understand how to connect yourself to love at the very first step and bring it into your life as a co-creator with you of the whole thing. Now, that's a miraculous act of truth that love enables you with. It works. That's what commitment does. The moment we commit ourselves to something, it doesn't have to be love, to anything. The moment you commit yourself to becoming a cement contractor, sorry to pick that, and pouring cement all over the county so that you can make your money and people can build buildings on your cement, things in nature start coming to you to make that possible for you. Nature is starting to work it out because you have told nature, I don't want to be an astronaut, I don't want to be a doctor, I don't want to be any of these other things that you could produce results for me. I want to be a cement contractor because that's where the money is, or that's where the cement is, whatever it is. So commitment is the thing that does that. Sorry about that, but I'm far enough away it can't hurt you. So that's the second step. And there's a bunch of things included in that, like hope and faith and the actions that make commitment work and what commitment is. And then the other 5 following that, we'll cover one by one in a podcast that's probably an hour to an hour and a half each. And you will have taken the entire workshop of how to empower your life with love. And if you want to take these 7 workshop steps as active and dynamic, then that's what will make it work. If you want to watch them, listen to them, intellectualize them, think about them, then you're probably in the end not going to have the empowerment you're seeking. So it's important to realize that this is a workshop. This is where you do this. This is where you give this power to yourself. And we're chipping away at the resistance to people doing that, the resistance to capturing it as an intellectual idea of things. And how many people do you know, they go to school and they study to learn a lot about something and then they never apply it to their life because they just made it an intellectual understanding. Yeah, I know everything there is about geology, but I'm never going to go out and look for gold or minerals. But you can go study geology with the intention to go look for minerals and find them. You see, it's just a question of how you structured it. So we cover that in it, and then we'll cover the other steps. And they're fairly obvious. If you're going to develop this relationship to love, you're going to have to identify it in you. It's already in there. It's already in there. It's in every single human being. I don't care who you are or what you have done. It's in there. It may be back in there a little ways, and you may have put a lot of dirt over it, but it's in there and it's alive and it's willing and it will work forward and you can have it. And that's why we see great conversions. Look at Saul on the road to Damascus in the Bible. He wasn't an average guy. He was a bastard. He was an asshole. He was turning Christians in to have them killed. His own friends, people he knew. And it was bothering him because it was bothering his conscience. It was bothering his true relationship to love, to a point where it finally caused a pineal and pituitary explosion in his head that went like that and blinded him for 3 days. And in the midst of that light, he had the full Monty with love itself, with his own soul speaking to him, with the Christ consciousness itself speaking to him, saying, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you beating me up?" He thought he was serving that God in him, but he was not. He was serving some God idea outside of him, which didn't work out. And that's what the whole story was changing over from. Something outside, which did not include love, to something inside that was love. So we see how that can happen, just like that. And a really bad person, in terms of their impact on others' lives, turns into somebody who founds one of the world's great teachings about love. So that's truth. And so we're going to work at it, all 7 steps, and we'll get Taylor in here with us, and probably Jack, and probably Seb, and some others to join, and Olivia. I got to get Olivia on board because she's 11, but she's smarter than the rest of us added together. These new kids today growing up have got some things inside them that are amazing. And it's all leading to love, the power of love in us. Thank you, and I really am grateful and appreciate the time and opportunity to do this, and to who the hell ever it was that invented the internet and making this possible. Thank you. Now let's